others with a $5,000 fine, that's nothing to them. So to the extent that we have always based upon a percentage, and we try to find a percentage that is going to capture their attention based upon the conduct of before us. I know that we did 10% on the show purse with Mr. Jones and Mr. Cormier. I think the Attorney General makes a good point that there was actual physical contact there, but I also think that this is conduct that is comparable to that. And so my thought process is throwing out for discussion to begin with is a 5% of the show purse as a potential fine. The second component is I think that this athlete needs to have some time doing some community service and some community outreach. I think that the suggestion that was made by his attorney about developing some type of a program for anti-bullying is something that is interesting. In advance, what I thought is that we could use Mr. McGregor because we need to do some educational materials to post on our website when it deals with our anti-doping regulations that are now in effect. And one of the things I think that would be a good form of community service for Mr. McGregor, or at least one form of community service, would be for him to be required then to enthusiastically participate and to record and broadcast them and make available for our use on our website then messages that would deal with our anti-doping efforts as well as the anti-bullying efforts. So I think that's my thought process in throwing out some suggestions for conversation.
So my concerns are twofold. I think Mr. McGregor and Mr. Diaz are extraordinary athletes, absolutely extraordinary athletes that children look up to. This sport is growing and has such a following. It's very impressive to have watched where it was, where it is now, and where it's going. So these children look up to Mr. McGregor, to Mr. Diaz. This is a very, very serious sport, not a circus. So what example are we setting? I have serious concerns about that. Not the profanity, although why? If this is a serious sport, let's treat it as such. But that kind of behavior, everybody watched that press conference because they're so excited to see these extraordinary folks in the octagon. So again, what kind of example are we setting? And so I have to say, an anti-bullying campaign, that feels like the right place to be. But my second concern is the safety concern. People could have really gotten hurt. There were a lot of folks in there. You can see on that video, people were screaming, ducking, moving around. They could have seriously been injured. It sounds like someone was injured, a security guard. So in that regard, this does need to be far more serious. So from my perspective, I think I've said this many times as I sit on this commission, safety is the most important. And I'm always looking for fighter safety to make sure that we're doing everything we can to preserve this sport and make sure our fighters are safe. But this goes further. The fighters have to be safe, but so does the public. And so given that concern, I too think that the discipline should be more significant. Consistent with the Jones and Cormier issue that arose, I also think percentages are the right way to go, and I would be suggesting 10%. I don't see a difference. As a matter of fact, I think the public could have been hurt far more than the previous incident. Now, when we talk about 10%, I would like us to consider whether or not that funds, part of those funds, a percentage of those funds are used for an anti-bullying campaign, because I think Mr. McGregor is in a very unique position to be able to really make a difference. And to really have these kids that are coming up in this sport, or just love the sport to watch, to see this extraordinary athlete really set the tone. And I think that that's possible. As to community service, I think that that is a definite component. You have indicated, counsel, that your concern is that he's able to fight in November and is training to do that, so I hear that. So community service is probably the right way to go in that way. But again, this is concerning, and I think these things are escalating, and there has to be a message to these athletes that that's not going to be tolerated. Safety comes first, but second, this sport is that important, needs to be respected as well.
What was the purse for this fight?
Well, the girls' purse was for Mr. McGregor was $3 million, and for Nate Diaz was $2 million.
If I may, there was a first agreed upon purse, which was significantly lower than that one.
And what was
I
that?
believe that was $1 million.
But your client received a gross show purse of $3 million.
The second purse, which was later amended at the request of the UFC, was $3 million, correct?
Understood.
Okay. Mr. Aguilar?
You know, I agree that this is a serious situation. The comments and the words we've all agreed that are not the issue. The issue is fiscal action. And the issue is where they put people in the middle. Mr. Diaz, Mr. McGregor, do whatever they want to each other, but we involve third parties and we involve the public. I think that's what the concern is. And again, I think this is distinguishable from the Cormier issue because Cormier was in a very public environment. There was actual contact, there was physical contact, people were hurt. This situation was a little more, it's not one I would condone or agree with, there was a little more control than the previous one. And I don't think money really impacts these guys. Once you have a certain level of pay, the money is not the issue, it's the time for these individuals. And so I would, personnel is not important to me, what's important is the amount of time that these individuals have to get back to the community. And I think anti-bullying campaign is appropriate. And I think there's a pretty positive one from Nevada already, it's called Put the Straps Up, and we want to look into it. And that's where I think we really get the message sent to these individuals, because the more time they have to personally dedicate to an issue, to resolve an issue they created, I think is more important. So I'd like to double the amount of community service hours from 25 hours of recommended by the attorney general to 50, and keep the amount of 25 and allow it to cover expenses related to the campaign.
When you say keep the $25,000 fine, is what you'd like to do? No, we can't control that money as far as to the campaign. So we all, and then I guess if Brent, do you want to clarify that? But the 25, all the fines that go to the general fund, and from there they go into the state's coffers.
Unless you decide otherwise and separate out the fines. Unless the fine.
But I don't think we can do that.
But can we not stipulate the amount of the fine to be used for a specific purpose?
Or allow credit?
I think that's part of the stipulation, if the agreement is that a certain amount can be for the fine and another amount can be set aside to go towards the campaign. So a certain amount of money. So it could be a $10,000 fine or $50,000 or whatever amount of money goes to the general coffers of the state, and then a certain portion can be set aside, say, to go towards the campaign itself.
Do we know for a fact, though, that we can do that?
You'd be basically having a penalty of the certain amount that would go to the general fund, and you would require him to do something else, like put money towards the anti-bullying campaign, would be directed, that wouldn't be the penalty, that would be a punishment, and it would, he would be directing him to go to that specific campaign.
Okay. Commissioner Avancino, your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think I've enjoyed hearing all of the comments of these distinguished commissioners, and I would only make 2 points. One is that I would agree with Commissioner Aguilar that we should increase the number of hours. That will be painful to Mr. McGregor in connection with this. That means he's thrown his microphone down. But I think in relation to the incident, I think that's appropriate. say that no matter how wealthy you are, $300,000 would get my attention. And I think that a lesser amount would get my attention as well, because it's out of your cash flow, and I think even for Mr. McGregor, that could make a impact on his decisions for future effort at press conferences. And thirdly, I think that perhaps UFC and the venue can do an even better job in maintaining security. I know that's the goal always. I see Mr. Henry up here, and he and I would say that's absolutely essential. And I think we could probably even do a better job on that to sort of prevent these incidents. But I am mindful of the fact that between the throwing of the missile and Diaz, there are a lot of others in the way, and I fear about their potential to be hurt. And that's it. So I would agree with more of a fine, and I also agree with more community service in this instance.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's thoughts. I will definitely throw out mine as well. I would agree with the community service. Increasing, I don't really have a take on it as far as the anti-bullying. I think it's a great message, and maybe some potential work for the athletic commission, like Commissioner Lundenwald brought up, although I'm hesitant to tie that to a disciplinary complaint. Although I think it's a good idea, I would rather maybe see that more voluntary on the athlete's behalf to come help the athletic commission, as I've thought about that while you were all talking. I understand the want up here to impose a large fine. I have a really hard time with a $300,000 fine for throwing a water bottle. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Yes, somebody could have gotten seriously hurt. Nobody did. Yes, they could have set the building on fire. That did not happen. They were throwing water bottles and a can at each other like children, which is not uncommon. And here we sit today, and I am not sure that any amount of money is going to deter this. And I'll be open that it appears at times these conference blow-ups are nothing more than premeditated discussions in order to drive pay-per-view buys. A guy shows up 35 minutes late. You know, you see Nate Diaz look at somebody in the video acknowledging, is it time? Is it time? Oh, it's time. I guess I'll get up and grab the water bottle. I saw a lot of other things in that video, and this is by no way for the media am I saying that UFC has anything to do with this. It just seems odd that these things continually happen. So I'm confused, to be honest with you, as far as what to do. I lack the clarity at the moment on what would actually have an impact or an effect on these superstar athletes to behave more like adults, like responsible people, and not have a little water bottle spat the day before. But it always appears that something the day before a big event is going to happen. Maybe it's coincidence. So I don't have any other thoughts than that, although I am struggling with that amount of money for a water bottle throwing in its own right. I could see $100,000, but I'm having a hard time with $300,000. That's pretty extreme, and in my opinion. And I'm just trying to learn from lessons in the past as well.
And let me ask you,
Being here in precedents that have been set. We have two gentlemen that actually struck each other with their fists, and we didn't even come close to that. So.
Chairman, this is Skip Avancino, but I quite agree that 300 does sound like a lot of money. I don't think it is necessarily to him, but it certainly gets his attention. But I am very satisfied with a lesser sum if, in fact, we can send the same message to him, because if there's a second incident, we'll take that into consideration for sure.
One of the things that I think that is a difficult aspect of any time we look at fines and penalties is that when we look at them in dollar amounts rather than in percentage amounts. And one of the things that we did with the Jones 28 matter was we got 10% of the penalty based upon the broadcast and publication then of this anti-bullying campaign that there appears to be consensus for us to talk about. I also think that as part of the motion needs to be that there reimbursement back to the athletic commission of the fees and costs that have been incurred and bringing this complaint to the rest for us.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I suggest that if you structure that they be fined the full amount, in lieu of paying half the fine, they may do community service, or in lieu of that, donate their time or whatever value to that amount, so we're not splitting the actual fine, but rather directing him to take some action in lieu of payment of the fine?
No, if I made a motion at this point in time, the fine is gonna be one issue, and the amount of community service is gonna be in addition to the fine. I'm just simply talking about that doing a broadcast, doing the preparation of a broadcast and the publication of a broadcast is gonna cost money. And if we can earmark a portion of the fine for that preparation in the broadcast, for that to be done. But the community service would be on top of and in addition to the fine.
I don't think he's arguing, I think what he's arguing is that we set a fine amount, and then whatever cost it is to implement a campaign or to conduct a community service be covered by Mr. McGregor. If that makes sense.
That's what I'm saying, out of his own funds, rather than it coming from the fine imposed by the commission, rather, he would be required out of his own funds to fund this campaign.
So that we don't have any issue as to the appropriateness of trying to get earmarked. In that circumstance, then my thought process would be is that maybe we go toward a lesser percentage, maybe something along 5% rather than 7 or 10%.
And-
Because we want this campaign to be glossy, full, and effective, and, decent campaigns cost money.
Just one thing, clarification, Mr. McGregor is located in Ireland, we are in Nevada. I think we do have to figure out where he's responsible for performing these services. My opinion would be Nevada.
The one question I guess that I would have for this council, I don't mean to interrupt,
No, no.
but I know that on his application for us, he does not list Ireland as his hometown address. He lists Irvine, California.
He spends the great majority of his time between Southern California and Las Vegas, and is currently actually in the process of purchasing a property here. He grew up and lives in Dublin. His current training camp with his coaches and training partners, et cetera, is in Dublin. So at this time, he's in Dublin.
At this point in time today, but what you're saying is though he spends a great deal of time in the U.S. between Southern California and Las Vegas.
That's correct.
So performing community service then either in Southern Cal or here in Southern Nevada is not going to prove to be a hardship for him. Too much for him.
No, I mean, I think his preference would be to serve his hometown, and if the commission's not amenable to allowing a community service. Now, I guess I would ask also, is your understanding that community service is different from the PSA? Because as I envision it, the PSA would be something that he would do as his community service. This is what he's providing to, rather, frankly, when you have somebody like Conor McGregor, rather than having him go into a single Boys and Girls Club or 2 Boys and Girls Clubs, he can create something that's professionally done, that's backed by the commission, that can go to every Boys and Girls Club, that can go to every school, to his tens of millions of followers. Like, this is something that we can do that I think will not only erase some of the negativity that arises from this, but increase the shine of the sport, which I know is your directive, and I know is the legislative intent, and I think is directly in keeping with what Conor would like to have come of this.
My opinion, it's a hybrid of both, because you can't just have a campaign without the promotion of the campaign. And so it's a
100%.
hybrid of both.
We agree with that.
Okay.
And if perhaps the commission would consider allowing, instead of, or perhaps, instead of most of the fine, the significant amount of the fine, allowing him to professionally produce something with your approval and, creative input, that makes everybody look better coming out of this. I think that's.
Mr. Chairman, how do we quantify that amount that we will be looking for Mr. McGregor to spend of his own money then? Are we saying that we will lessen our fine as a result of his commitment to expend a certain amount that Mr. Bennett can make certain he has spent? Or do we, I think that's the most sensible approach, we can do something like that.
One of the things that we did with Mr. Cormier is having some type of and they're very humbling working. And with an athlete, it may need to be taught a lesson. It may need to be humbled as it relates to the dealing with the public. Requiring him to spend some time actually in a boys' room or dealing with children on a one-on-one basis is not only beneficial for him, but also beneficial for the people who they touch.
Perhaps with appropriate waivers from the children's parents, what we can do is incorporate his visits into the production of the anti-bullying campaign. That way we're accomplishing both goals and preserving the content for the long-term benefit of us.
Maybe something in order to keep it simple is that he needs to spend 50 hours physically in the community doing service and speaking about not bullying. If he can accomplish the video, the campaign, the shooting of the campaign while he is doing that, then so be it, and good for him. But at the end of the day, he needs to spend 50 hours in the field with the kids. And if a part of that message can be filmed again coming out of that, then that's good. It would be actually authentic. It would be real. It would be Conor in the public with the kids at the Boys and Girls Clubs. Something to that effect. 50 hours may not be appropriate. Maybe it should be 40.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to the commission. But I think, we can make this way too complicated. He's a fantastic athlete. I'm sure he can talk and get filmed at the same time, and he can handle that. So why don't we figure out what you guys think the hours are, and then we can figure out how we want to verify this.
I think that's a remarkable opportunity for Conor as well. And he should take that opportunity and put his full effort into it. I think 50 hours is satisfactory for that, Chairman. And then as far as quantifying the dollars that he may spend for the takeaway or a video, that's something that we should discuss, or is that just at his goodwill? Do we want to impose an obligation on him? No?
I personally don't, because it'll be hard to quantify. And I am still struggling with the 5%. That is pretty, it's $150,000.
One of the reasons that I continue to advocate for the 5% is that it is a percentage based upon, how we have looked at meeting out punishment to athletes before. As I suggested before, some athletes would be financially allowed by such a fine. Other athletes, this is walking around changing. So to the extent that, from my perspective, I continue to advocate for at least 5% of a fine in addition to the community service, in addition to the attorney's fees, as part of the motion.
I would ask the commission to consider that the initial agreement was for $1 million.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding that, ma'am.
What did he get paid the night he fought?
$3 million.
That's all I care about.
That's
That's
all.
all that matters. That's the person. And none of that is win money. That's just the straight check that I saw that night.
Correct, but I think the complication with that lies when you have fighters who are compensated in different ways. And what we are going to find, I think perhaps, is that when more money in the show becomes subject to discipline, then that money is going to be reallocated to, bonus appearance, name and likeness releases, et cetera. And so what I'd like for the commission to consider is the ramifications that would have on fighter compensation going forward.
We made that issue in the context of Mr. Cormier and Mr. Jones.
We did.
Commissioner Aguilar, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the point. The PSA component is what is probably most moving about this. I have to say, I appreciate very much Mr. McGregor apologizing, taking responsibility for his conduct, and so that does move me in that way. But I do think this concept of an anti-bullying campaign, doing a PSA with kids at the Boys and Girls Club, any of those things, I think will really start to change potentially the conversation, the way the sport may be perceived, at least by our kids. But did you have some concerns about that? I wasn't quite sure.
No, not at all. I think a PSA or whatever, however to get the message out is the best. I'm just thinking about, look, individuals who have limited time, and when you put a value on that time, going from 25 hours to 50 hours is significant for somebody like Mr. McGregor. There is a daily value to having somebody have to commit that amount of time. I'd rather see more time on the field than an actual fine, and that's why I'm struggling with, we've placed a burden on him for 50 hours of community service plus the campaign initiative. And so to continue with a 5% of the purse is a struggle for me, because the value in this issue is the amount of time on the ground. And, you know, these people have a value time. If you ask them what his appearance fee is on a per day basis, I'm sure it's much more significant than it was in the actual fine amount. That's what I'm trying to say. That's all. And I think we benefit our community better by the community service rather than the fine.
So to be clear, I was suggesting 10%, but given the apology, given all the things we're talking about, I'm willing to look at less of a percent, but I want to make sure that the PSA is funded. So that's where I keep getting stuck. What are we saying? How are we ensuring that the PSA is funded and is meaningful? I'm happy to decrease the percentage, happy to do those things to make sure that that piece is what's fully functional. So that's where I'm struggling to find consensus of where we are on that piece.
Commissioners, if I may, Conor has access to a full team of elite levels of documentary people and editors and film folks. If we could agree upon a structure whereby the commission and our office and Conor and a very high-end production team could agree on a storyboard and et cetera with the...
Before we get into details, why don't we just agree that we're going to leave it to the chairman and the executive to accomplish what I think all of our goals are in the long run.
But I think in fairness, we should give them some direction or
Yes.
some of our input as to the amount for the PSA that is going to be
I think we have.
spent. And so Chairman, I know we will have the same interest in this, executing it. How do you quantify it again is the question, what amount? If we impose a percentage fine, which it sounds like there's an interest here to do that, and then Chairman, how much is he going to be required to expend for this elite documentary and his personal service in the state?
And one of the things that I can't help but think is that, and I applaud this PSA, and I think that it's terrific. It has many purposes. But one of the things it's also going to do, it's going to increase the profile of this outfit. And so to the extent that we mete out a punishment, it's not really fully a punishment. And so to the extent that's why I'm continuing to try to advocate that there be a financial component to this in addition to the community service and the PSA that is being done. Otherwise, what we end up doing is allowing an athlete to be creative and to increase his profile by also assisting, with children in the public message associated with that. And so I think that we need to continue to recognize that what we are looking at is discipline for inappropriate behavior. And that inappropriate behavior was the throwing of the missiles, so to speak, during a public press conference.
I'm not arguing with that. That's why I exactly said this needs to be a hybrid, because there needs to be a certain number of hours that are on the ground in actual service. So I agree with you, and I agree with that component. I wasn't arguing against it. I'm just saying we could sit here all day and negotiate this, but I think the chairman and the executive director understand what our intent is and our wishes, and they can fully see this out to ensure that we are, one, doing our duty and ensuring that there is discipline in this issue, but at the same time, there's a benefit to a third party that's not.
No, let me just suggest a little easier approach then. I don't think the chairman or executive director have the time to monitor this
I agree.
program. I think we gotta give them a fine and tell them they have to spend a certain amount of money on this PSA, and let them come back with their accountants to demonstrate that to the executive director and chairman's approval that it's been spent.
And some number of hours.
And some number of hours, yes.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think we pick a percentage of the purse, we divide that, so what goes to the general fund, if that's, if I'm just gonna use 5% as the theoretical example, that would be $75,000 in the general fund, and it would be $75,000 towards the PSA. And he would have 50 hours of community service, meaning in the field with the kids' service.
I would support that.
That would be very easy to split, and executive director and I, we will only monitor the program as long as we can be in the commercial with Conor. I was just kidding.
All right,
Okay.
So let me
Just seeing if you're all still awake.
see if I can put this
Go ahead.
Form of a formal motion here. We would find liability against this athlete based upon the allegation and the admission and the acknowledgement that the throwing of the water bottle and the Monster energy drink was inappropriate at a public restaurant. We would impose discipline in this format, that 5% of his show purse, which would be $150,000, we would require 50 hours of community service, a portion of which could be used for purposes of a public service campaign with a message to be anti-bullying. Of the financial penalty, 50% of that amount would go to the general fund, 50% could be used for the publication, the broadcast, and the anti-bullying PSA. In addition to require the athlete to reimburse this commission its attorney's fees and costs for having to bring this matter. That would be my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Can I offer just one friendly amendment? Instead of could we use the word should? So in the 50 hours, can we put a percentage on that as well? Of 10% of those hours can be used to produce the campaign, so 5 out of the 50, the other 45 need to be in the field with the kids?
That's an excellent amendment, and I would accept that amendment. So that 10% of the hours could be devoted for the public service campaign. The balance of the hours have to be performed in genuine public service, preferably in some form dealing with children, working with children.
Okay, and of the 50%, meaning in this case 75,000 that will be used to promote the anti-bullying campaign, that will be on Executive Director Bennett and myself to work with Conor and the team of experts to understand how that money is being spent, and that we feel it's appropriate given the intent that the commission had here today.
Agreed.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second with some friendly amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
All against?
I will vote aye, and I want to be clear on the record. Again, I think it's important for this commission to be consistent, and I think percentage is the way to do that when we have incidents like this. So again, 10% being consistent with other similar incidents is important. However, Mr. McGregor's conduct today with the idea of this public service announcement, engaging with the community, he took responsibility, apologized, and made no excuses, even to the point of withdrawing defenses. So I can vote for this resolution in part because this athlete, I think, stepped up and took full responsibility. He's actually doing something to better the sport and better our community. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Commissioner Lumble, what period of time will we give him for this community service? And do we need to add that to the motion?
We certainly can, because we have not finalized the vote.
And I think that amendment is an excellent suggestion, and I would say 6 months would be the outside date for a verified performance of the 50 hours.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, motion passes unanimously. Mr. McGregor, thank you for joining us on the telephone. Now move to item G, any public comment, either in the room or on the phone.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, no public comment in the room, any public comment on the phone? Seeing none. The chairman's report, I have nothing at this time, although I know that we are working diligently on the implementation of our new regs that were in place on September 9th, and working on some forms and some additional administrative things to help facilitate that. Are there any matters for future agenda or agendas?
Not for future agenda, but could we have council circulate our new regs as they're
Yes, we can. We'd like to circulate the final version from the LCB.
And November 10th, we're still meeting?
We are. Okay, so I have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.